This is a continuation of the Suturing Tricks and Techniques PowerPoint they did at the conference last year. We're going to be discussing the different types of stitches and when they might be used. And all these I demonstrated in a little demonstration video, so you can just look at my channel if you actually want to see it demonstrated. The first one we're going to talk about is the simple running stitch, when you're just starting at one end and just running it in and out of the tissue. Simple running stitch is sometimes called a baseball stitch. You might be using this if you were closing skin when you had it all together nicely with the deep dermals, or when they've taken some tacking stitches deeper and they just want to run it around. For instance, on a graft, they've taken some tacking stitches and then in between they'll do a simple running stitch. The advantage of the simple running is that the tension is distributed evenly along the suture line. The disadvantage is if it breaks, then you've lost the integrity of your whole suture line. Then you have the interrupted stitch, which is a single stitch and you tie each one off. So what these may be used for is the deep dermal. If they're tacking a graft material in, like in the abdomen, they won't be doing interrupted stitches on a carotid graft, only on like abdominal, or if they're doing a reconstruction on a breast. So they're just tacking with simple interrupteds. Now the advantage to these are that if one breaks, you still have the others holding. The disadvantage is it has points of tension, which are obviously at the point where you put each suture in. You have your running subcuticular, which the plastic surgeons just love because it's not visible, it heals really well, and they don't have to take stitches out in the office afterwards. So the running subcuticular is going to be running under the skin. The doctor may choose either to bury the knot at each end, and in that case you want to bury it as deeply as you can, or some surgeons will just bring the suture out like a centimeter or half a centimeter out past each end of the incision, and then they'll cut that excess suture off at the end of the case, when they come back in the office and it's healed. And with those of you, if they did that and came out at the end, you'd have to put a steri strip on top of it to help hold it in place until it heals. Then you have your horizontal mattress stitch. When would this be used? The horizontal mattress stitch is going to be used in areas where there's a lot of movement or where the skin doesn't want to sit together nicely and stay. Anytime you see a horizontal mattress or a vertical mattress, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Horizontal mattress, you want to see the skin not just laying straight like this, but you want to see a little bit of a ridge. You want it to coapt and evert because you're trying to take the tension off the skin, and you're trying the incision line, and you're trying to keep it together the whole time. So this might be used in radiated breast tissue or on a toe or a palm. Then you have your vertical mattress, which is similar to the horizontal. On the horizontal, you're going to see, or jumping back a little bit, in the horizontal, here's your incision. You're going to see the suture running parallel or horizontally to the skin incision. On the vertical mattress, you're going to see it coming perpendicular to the incisions. The incision's still here, and you're going to see it coming perpendicular to it. So when would you use the vertical mattress? You might use it on if you're closing a trocar wound for arthroscopy of the knee or the shoulder, and they don't want to use any subcuticular, they just want you to close it with a nylon. So then you just would use this vertical mattress that would hold it together nicely and keep the skin edges together until it heals. Another place that the vertical mattress is good is if you are doing an amputation and you want to bring those big flaps. This would be obviously a much bigger needle that you would use for this. And you use the vertical mattress when you're approximating an amputation of a leg. And you have your figure 8. Figure 8 is used when you have a lot of tension or there's something strong and you want to hold it really well. So if they were closing the fascia as they're closing an abdomen, they would very frequently use a figure 8. What the figure 8 does is a little wider of a stitch, and anytime, if you think about standing on your feet, if you stand on one foot, all that pressure is on that one foot. If you put the second foot down, you've distributed your weight over 2 feet, so there's not as much tension at any one point. And that's kind of what you're doing with a figure 8. The other time that a figure 8 comes in useful is if they're suturing a muscle. Because muscles, even though they're strong for using us as a body to suture them together, they're friable and they tear easily. So by using a figure eight on the muscle, they're spreading that tension out, and where it would tear through if you just had one stitch holding it together, one strand, with a figure eight, the muscle will come together nicely. Then you have your escape stitch, and this is used when the surgeon is using a non-absorbable like a Prolene or a nylon that he's doing a running subcuticular, and he has a knot on either end. But if the incision is too large and he wanted to pull that out, which that's why you're doing the escape stitch, so they can pull it out in the office. If it's too long, there's too much tension on it, and then when they went to pull it, it would break off and you'd have that suture buried underneath the skin when you didn't want it to be. So you're taking about 2-inch segments of skin incision, and then you're coming out every 2 inches or so and doing the escape stitch, so that when the patient comes back to the office, that the surgeon can cut that escape stitch and have a little strand, and then he can keep pulling it out, the little pieces that are manageable and that won't break under the skin. So that's why you do an escape stitch. The locking stitch is a stitch that's self-explanatory. It will lock itself, but you will see that surgeons don't usually use this because this can tend to be constrictive and impair the circulation. So the only place that I've ever seen it used, and I'm sure there are probably others, but where I've seen it used is when we've done hysterectomies or C-sections. Excuse me, not hysterectomies, but C-sections, when they're closing the neck of the cervix, of the uterus there. There's a lot of huge vessels there, and they want to make sure that that uterus stays dry, so they're going to use a locking stitch to close the uterus. You have a slip knot, and it's very important with a slip knot, and it's hard to do it when you're thinking about it and the surgeon's watching you, but the only way you're going to get a slip knot to slip is by making sure that instead of squaring off the knot and throwing it, one this way and then the second one this way, you want to throw them both this way so that you can slip it down, and then once you get it down, then you can throw the next knots back and forth. But the slip knot is very important that you throw those first 2 loops the same direction so that you're going to be able to cinch it down, and then it will hold the tissue long enough for you to get the next throw in. You have your surgeon's knot, which is what we were talking about, that you go this way and then you go the other way each time, and that's locking it each time. So that's, the surgeon's knot you're starting with you're throwing 2 loops with the surgeon's knot for that first one, and then that helps give a little extra hold so that it doesn't slip. And then squaring off the knot is going back and forth. A locking throw, you'll see it in one of the demonstration videos, is when you go to throw that suture down and there's a little bit of tension, and if you let go, a little bit of tension on the incision, if you let go, it loosens up. So you throw it this way, which is the correct way, but then you see it's not going to stay, so you just take that little extra strand, throw it the opposite direction, and it will kind of hold it in place till you can get the next throw in. And the box stitch and the Z-stitch I'll be talking about. That's kind of what I named for the running subcuticular, and I'll talk about that in another video. But I just wanted to show you this graphic for those of you who want to see what it would look like. This demonstrates what each stitch would look like if you were looking on the outside of the incision. And the simple running you're going to have, it's going to be either diagonal or straight, depending on where your stitch is burying itself underneath, and it doesn't really matter. The interrupted, you're going to have a knot on each one. The running subcuticular, you're not going to see anything. Either the knot's going to be buried, or you can see on the left side there, I have demonstrated that the surgeons brought that suture out the end, and then you just put a steri strip on top of it. The escape stitch, you're going to see the 2 ends and then just the 1 strand for wherever you do the escape. The figure 8, you're going to have the dotted lines are buried under the skin. You're just going to have the 2 sides showing, and then beneath the skin it's going to cross into what they call the figure 8. The horizontal mattress, you can see that the stitch is going to be running horizontal to the incision. The vertical mattress that you would use on the amputations is going to be coming perpendicular, and the knot's going to be on one side. And then the half-buried mattress, which is a running subcuticular on one side, and a half-buried mattress or interrupted, you can do it either way, is going to show on one side as parallel, and on the other side you're not going to see it at all. If you like what you see, then just tune into my channel, First Assisting Techniques and Tricks, and you can learn more.